Hello and welcome to the FSF podcast. I'm Tim. I'm your host, and this is Ben, my co-host. I want to remind you that this show is made by nerds for nerds, and so we are glad and proud that you found our nerdery. Now, typically we have a much shorter introduction, but what's a little bit of what is it? Plagiarism. That's right, plagiarism between friends. What's a little plagiarism between friends? I may have stolen our guest introduction from one of her websites, and because I was too lazy to write my own. So here it goes. Our guest today has a lot of opinions on anything from the Sumerian creation myths to the correct way to make a martini. At various points of her life, she has wanted to be an archaeologist, anthropologist, architect, diamond cutter, fashion illustrator, graphic designer, or Batman. I like that one, Batman. Turning from such obvious trades, she is now a video game producer by day and spends her evenings writing science fiction and fantasy. When not writing, she could be found debating the Oxford comma and Joss Whedon's, I practice this word, over at various, it means body of work. I know that much. Joss Whedon's body of work at various local coffee shops. Anyway, let's welcome author and game producer Jenn Lyons. Welcome to the show, Jen, and thank you for letting me plagiarize your website.
And I know exactly where you got that from because it's the one place I haven't updated my bio.
So that was
it's a very interesting snippet of your life there.
Yeah, there was a period of time. Well, currently, the current bio doesn't mention Joss Whedon for some reason.
I can't imagine why. But we can talk about works at him without mentioning him, like Firefly.
Yes.
I love Firefly.
As do
Probably
I.
One of the few good things he's done.
No,
Exactly.
The problem is he's done a lot of good things, right?
It's just the other things behind the scenes that weren't.
It wouldn't be so painful if he hadn't created stuff that was really loved.
Right. If he would like O.J. Simpson, we could be like, yeah, we're good. We can walk away from it.
Right.
It was just, but no, he had to go create Firefly and then be a dick. Anyway, all right.
I will say, there's a lot of the things that you wanted to do in your life that are very similar to my wants when I was
right
hoping for a future career. The only difference being, I never wanted to be Batman. I wanted to be Godzilla.
Oh, okay.
I have a distinct memory, and my parents will constantly mention it, of me being 3 years old, walking down the block going, I'm going to be Godzilla when I'm older.
Well,
that explains a lot.
I have a pair of nibblings.
Thanks.
My nibblings are twins, and they thought that they were those. There was a period of time where they thought they were those two Japanese girls that were running around. Yeah. So
Great.
they were probably around 3.
I love it. All right.
Yep.
Oh boy.
All right. So this is fantastic. Love it. All right. So Jen, it would appear by what I've found on the internet of you that we actually have 2 interviews going simultaneously, because there's Jen by day and then there's Jen by night.
Yes.
Both in nerdy lanes, but in different paths. So we typically ask our guests at the beginning of every interview to help us to get to know them by talking about their origin story. And I'm hoping that there's a way that you can explain your origin story to us that encompasses both halves of this distinctly nerdy life. I mean, we are nerds, and nerds love a good origin story. So
sure,
what got you to the place where you were producing video games, writing books, the whole 9 yards?
I don't know that Well, let's see. So the writing books thing, actually, you know what? Yes. They all do have the same origin story, and it's called Dungeons and Dragons.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, because when I was a little kid, specifically when I was a little kid, I came across this book called The Tombs of Atuan by Ursula K. Le Guin. And I read that and just had never come across anything like that in my life, because here was this protagonist who was female and imperfect and kind of a bitch, and not on a pedestal. Yeah, I mean, you know, like there was like, she had character and depth, and so basically I spent an entire summer drawing mazes on every scrap of paper I could possibly get. And that turned into, I already had a dragon obsession, which we can talk about if you like. I already had a dragon obsession. It just sort of, what, there's a thing out there where I can do mazes and dragons, I'm in. And that turned into creating stories around the characters, right?
Okay.
It turned into video games. It turned into just a love of stories and a love of interactive telling of stories. The way we can do this cooperatively or uncooperatively, depending on the circumstances. And you know, that became, you know, I was writing all of these. Yeah, I was that player. I was the player that was, you know, like, here's my 5,000 word background on, you know, this character.
As a DM, thank you. I love those. I love getting handed a packet when someone says I've made a character.
Right. And you know, had been doing this for some time, and my first husband dared me to write a book. And I said, okay. And I did. And you know, it was trash. I think that's pretty normal. It's complete garbage, but I really enjoyed it. And so I kept doing it. And then the video game thing was somewhat of a, I was originally an illustrator and graphic designer.
Okay.
That was art director. That was my career path, and specifically print media. And I got to a point where I kind of realized that the specific track that I was on career-wise was kind of dying off, because newspapers were getting smaller and smaller, or they were going online, and magazines were, you know, it was all sort of turning into this thing where I could see the writing on the wall. So a friend of mine said, well, why don't you transition over to video games? You can do UI, because that's how that usually works. A graphic designer gets into video games, goes into UI.
Okay.
And so I started working over at EA. I was doing it the old-fashioned way, which was QA. Start at QA, work your way up. And I ended up working under a producer who was kind of like, you're not going to go into UI. I'm like, I'm not. And he's like, yeah, no, you're going to go producer track. And kind of started mentoring me. And
nice.
Yeah. And that turned into being a producer, right? You know, turned into project management and production, all of that sort of thing. Because it turns out that I really enjoy checking off done tasks, making sure people have done that. But, you know, and the just the whole creative process of getting a group of people to throw their heads together and create something is very satisfying. It's a really cool process to be a part of. And because I have this art background, I'm great at dealing with other artists, because it's kind of hard for them to bullshit me. So
there you go.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where those two things happened. And then I had gotten a job. I originally was in LA. I got a job out here in Atlanta, and I moved out here and discovered that my ridiculous commute had vanished, because the traffic situation between LA and Atlanta is very different. Yeah. I actually lived exactly as far away from my new job here in Atlanta as I had lived back in LA, but the commute went from anywhere from an hour to 2 hours each way to 15 minutes, as an example. So suddenly I had a little bit of extra time, and I figured, well, I'm going to go back and like pick up writing again and really sort of work at it.
Nice.
And I did, not really expecting. I mean, I thought I'll do it. I'll have the sense of accomplishment. Maybe I will self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished one book in particular, and I sent it to a friend of mine, and who was himself an author, and he called me up. He actually called me up and said, if you self-publish this, I'm never talking to you again. which is not to denigrate people who self-publish. It really isn't.
Right.
I
know what
nothing
you mean,
but respect. But so I did start trying to get an agent, and of course nothing came of that, as is often the case. Like, went through attempt after query after query after query after query, and I pretty much gave up on it. And then a different friend messaged me and said, "Hey, I found your agent." She sent me a link to his page, said, "This is your agent. Send him a query. I'll wait." I was like, okay. Well, it says here that he's looking for like Terry Pratchett style, and that's not me. She's like, keep reading. And he's like, he's also looking for epic fantasies with a cast of thousands and multiple maps and appendices in the back. And I was like, oh, that is me, actually. Yeah, that there it is.
Hey, look, I found myself.
But I was resigned to the fact that nothing was going to be successful. Did not have any, to give. And as a result, I'm trying. I curse like a sailor. I'm trying here.
You're doing great.
I'm the same. The F word is a comma for me.
Right, exactly. And so I instead of my normal like form query letter, I wrote off this completely sassy, spur of the moment. I mean, I broke the fourth wall in a query letter, which
nice.
I did things you're not supposed to do in a query letter. I specifically, like at one point, talked about dick jokes in a query letter. But it turned out what I was doing was being really authentically me. And
love it.
So he wrote me back immediately and was like, okay, send me the next 50 pages. And I did. And then, like 2 hours later, he said, okay, send me the whole book. And then 2 weeks later, he said, can I have your phone number? I want to talk to you on the phone, which it's too late to make a long story short, but yeah, he was my agent.
Love it.
She was absolutely right. So, we went through some stuff. It was not an instant signing process. He did in fact do what's called a revise and resubmit, which is he had critiques and he didn't want to try to sell the book until those had been dealt with to his satisfaction. On the other hand, all of his critiques were, in my opinion, valid. So it wasn't a case where I was like, where somebody was asking me to do something that was uncomfortable. It was like, oh, this is really valuable input. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're absolutely going to do this. But then like 18 months later, he did sign me and I got a 5-book contract with Tor. So
that's awesome. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my original, my debut series was this 5-book series called The Chorus of Dragons. And then my most recent book, which is standalone, The Sky on Fire, came out in July. So
very nice.
Yeah. That's everything.
I love it. No, we always tell people that the long answers are good answers because we always find out a little bit more about the person and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And hey, the less that people have to hear me talk, I think the better off they are. So good on you. So
you mentioned that you have The Sky on Fire and you also have your other 5-book series, Chorus of Dragons. What challenges does a storyteller face when writing like a long form story, something that has to be broken up. Can I help you? For instance, I would imagine fact checking, going through that resubmit process that you had just to get one book out. How was that times 5?
Well, I mean, it was challenging, definitely. We stuck to a very tight schedule. It was one book every 10 months. And all of the books ran around between 212 and 225,000 words. So, yeah, they're chunky. They're chunky boys, as they say.
Great phrase.
Yeah, door stoppers, I think, is the other one that gets used a lot. So yeah, there was definitely challenges to that. Then in the middle of that, we had COVID, which threw everything out of whack. I mean, it disrupted everything. So that was an additional challenge. I think the hardest part about writing a 5-book epic fantasy series is that the general public, to some extent, has been kind of poisoned against big epic fantasy series, because let's just say that what I got a lot when the first book came out was, I don't read series until they're finished because I've been burned too many times. I
can attest that sentiment because that is my wife's. She is a avid book reader. I think she's on, it's now August, it's almost the end of August. Just this month, she has gone through 20 books.
Sure. Yeah, I totally get it. And of course, the problem with that is that if your books don't sell well enough, you even if you've got a 5-book contract, you're not necessarily going to be able to finish that contract, right? It's
sure, yeah.
Sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People aren't buying the books because they're waiting for a series to be finished that will never be finished because nobody bought the books. It's a business, and
right. Yeah, first and foremost,
if the books are not making a profit, it's going to be difficult to sell the publisher on why they should keep putting them out. So that was a little bit of a challenge. I will admit I did some very immature gloating when book 5 came out. I was like, see, I told you guys I would do this.
It's almost
Suck it, losers. Book 5. Boom.
Did it.
Yeah.
It's almost like the medal at the end of like a triathlon or like a really long marathon. You're like, I'm done. It's over.
It's done. Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, there's particularly for a series like this that was really intensive in the world building department. There was an awful lot of making sure that you're keeping everything straight, which isn't that hard for me, honestly, but I'm going to blame that on D&D too, right? You grow up keeping track of really long running campaigns and monster manuals and the spells, and like you just used to keeping track of all this information. So it's not a big deal to keep track of all this information. So that was actually a funny, not funny realization on my part. It was like, oh, this actually isn't a skill everyone has.
I've been doing this my whole life. Who knew?
I never even thought about it as being unusual or weird. And then I started getting people going, how do you keep it all in your head? And I'm like,
it just is.
It is.
I actually had a comment similar to that today where they're just like, how can you do math really quick? I'm like, oh, because when you roll Fireball and you have like the rush of the moment, you just quickly go 38. You
Yeah.
didn't do.
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. You know.
And then there's me over here taking off my shoes going 5, 11, 17. Where'd I get the extra toes from?
All the games I'm in right now are all online. So like they'll do the math for you.
Yeah.
It's not even
But
a thing.
sometimes you want the math rocks.
Oh, I like the math rocks. I like the math rocks a lot.
That was very
don't make me go
unsatisfactory.
get my make me go get my vase of dice because it's big.
I would, unfortunately, it's in Florida right now, and I don't have access to it. I have a treasure chest that's like yay big of just dice. I probably have tens of thousands. I have that exact die. It's not here. No.
I'm trying to find my
So I
Alcoholics Anonymous dice bag, and I can't seem to find it. I don't want to do it.
I have that exact D20, and I call it the last word.
Yeah.
Because when there is a death save, you pick up. That thing's heavy.
Heavy. Yeah.
And I'm like,
no, it's
this
heavy.
is you feeling the weight of your character's life in your hand. You roll it, and if you die in game,
right,
you have a final thought, and you get to say one word.
Right. Okay.
The last word, and it's
the last word.
I've had some,
which is, by the way,
moments
one of my
with
favorite
that.
cocktails.
Huh.
I'll have to look that up.
It's very
Never
good.
heard of it, but I will. You have my attention. You said cocktail. All right. So Jen, let's talk a little bit about your book, Sky on Fire. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show is because you had this new book coming out, and we are very pro fantasy on this show. The book came out in July, which we're recording this at the end of August. But tell everybody about the book, because this is a standalone book. It's separate from your Course of Dragons series. So if you would, tell everybody about the book, the premise of it, and where people can find it.
Sure. So any of my books are probably going to be available anywhere books are sold. Maybe not in your big box stores. Probably aren't going to find it at Target. But although there was a time where you could find Ruin of Kings at Costco, all places. But yeah. But no. I always recommend that people support your local indie bookstores, most of whom are more than happy to ship. So, it can definitely be ordered through any local indie bookstore. But if you absolutely have to, it's also available from all the big guys. It's published by Tor, so it's pretty easy. So the book itself is my elevator pitch for it. Like, it's the most succinct elevator pitch I've had so far. It's Dragon Riders of Pern meets Ocean's 11.
And you have my attention.
No, I'm sorry. My brain just dawned on the fact that my wife ordered that book. That is the exact phrase she gave me when she's like, I'm getting this new book. It's going to be great. I cannot wait to tell her I interviewed the author, and she's just going to freak out.
Yeah. So the origin. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. When my first book came out, everyone was like, "What was your inspiration?" The most dreaded question, right? What was your inspiration? And I'm like, I literally wrote the first character for this when I was 15. I've been doing the world building for this for 30 plus years, right? I cannot point to. I made a game of it at one point. Of I never gave anyone the same answer, and I never lied. Because
fun thing to do.
There were so many different things that went into this series, into this book. It was never one single thing. Sky on Fire is not the same. Sky on Fire, the inspiration for it was a Twitter conversation that was happening a couple of years ago. There's actually two things, but one of them is this Twitter conversation, and people said if you could rewrite any book, not a rewrite as in take credit for, but a rewrite as in your take on, like, you know,
Sure.
the Pride and Prejudice rewrites and the, you know, this is a modern retelling of, what would it be? And instantly I thought Dragon Riders of Pern, which, I mean, I know that's the series Dragonflight is, but
Okay.
but Dragonflight. The other inspiration for it was when the first book came out, one of the very first questions that I was asked was, because there are dragons in A Chorus of Dragons as well, go figure, can we ride the dragons? And I was like, oh God, no. don't no. That would be a terrible idea. The dragons in A Chorus of Dragons are all basically kaiju, right? They're giant flying natural disasters. They're terrible. there's no friendliness there, right? It's just awful. Because, you know, I am a Tolkien nerd, and who doesn't love a dragon that can flatten a mountain when it dies, you know?
Fair enough.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start with that idea of, here's this alien world where dragons have evolved and humans are introduced into this, and this sort of relationship occurs. Except I wasn't I was joking about it. I was really not serious about it at all. Just joking about it. But then I was talking about the issue. I guess we're up to 3 things. Sorry.
That's okay.
I was talking about it with my husband, and I mentioned that in all of these Dragon Rider books, that the ones I love, I mean, you know, I adore these books. The dragons are always kind of loyal flying puppies, right? They're wonderful. We adore them. They may be intelligent, but they're not as intelligent, and they're mostly just absolutely loyal.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked over at me and said, what if they weren't? I was like, no. What if they weren't loyal? He's like, yeah, what if they weren't loyal? What if the dragons didn't have that need to be loyal? I was like, well, that would be a completely different society. That would be a society where, I mean, if you're talking large, super intelligent, magic using dragons, they'd be in charge.
Right.
Okay, never mind. I want to write this book. I'm not joking anymore. I want to write this book. And so that's what turned into this idea of this society where there is a dragon rider dragon relationship, but the dragon riders don't get a choice. It's the dragons that are saying, that kid, that's the one I want. And congrats, kid. You get to be a dragon rider. And you know, if you don't like that dragon, tough, because they picked you.
Right.
That's real interesting, because usually it's the narrative of like the person goes and picks out a bunch of dragon hatchlings or something like that, like picking out a dog.
Yeah.
And now flip exactly. The script, and now you're the dog.
Right. Yeah. And that was even like, I remember a beta tester coming back to me. It's like, when do we have the hatching scene? And I was like, there's the hatching scene. She's like, yeah. When are the dragon eggs going to hatch and they're going to bond? I'm like, that isn't going to happen. That's not a thing. It's the reverse, right? You have these any kids in the human society who show magical potential get sort of ushered into this school to become dragon riders, and they get picked from the graduates by dragons to be their riders. It's not, there's no hatching scene. But it was a really interesting reminder of how that was the expectation. You know, that's such a trope of that genre that she assumed that there had to be that, right?
Well, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, so the idea behind the book is that you have somebody who was supposed to be a dragon rider and failed at it, was basically accused of having committed a crime. Specifically, she was accused of having stolen from the hoard of the dragon that was going to choose her, because they still have hoards. And she was sentenced to death, which in their society means being thrown off a very tall, at a very high altitude, and thrown to your death into the jungles below. And she didn't actually die for reasons, but so years later, she finds herself basically being kidnapped by a group of people who want her to help them rob this dragon, the same dragon, because she's done it before. But of course,
out so well the last time.
She hadn't done it before. She was in fact innocent of what she'd been accused. So she's now found herself in the middle of this heist, where she has to help them, but she also doesn't have the background that they seem to think she has.
Sounds really cool.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun to make, right? It was a lot of fun to do. In the acknowledgements, I think 2 authors, primarily. One was, of course, Anne McCaffrey for providing inspiration. The other one was George R.R. Martin, because well, let's just say that most of the native animals on this planet are hexapodal, specifically as a tip of the hat at George's, six-limbed dragons are unrealistic comment, which I'm never going to stop teasing him about.
All right. Very cool.
That's very interesting way to look at your dragons. Speaking about books and dragons, so we both have a common thread of the Lord of the Rings, as most people do. And you made a video that's just over an hour about how...
And I never posted a sequel to it.
Put that on the to-do list. It's somewhere.
I know where it is. It just needs to finish being edited. Yep. Anyway, sorry. Ask the question. I'm sorry.
You're good. You made a video about the Fellowship of the Ring, how the movie was actually better than the book in certain places. The question is kind of in 2 parts. What is your favorite way in which the movie is better than the book? And what is your favorite way that the book is better than the movie?
Okay. My favorite way in which the movie, it's been long enough since I made that thing that I don't remember half of what I said in it.
Well, that was kind of the hope, we're not going to lie.
Real answers. Nothing
yeah.
here.
I think that how to upset a whole lot of people all at once. I think removing Tom Bombadil was the right decision.
All right, I'm sorry, we're ending this interview right now.
I get why Tolkien loved Tom Bombadil as much as he did, but the fact that you could remove Tom Bombadil with basically no change to the rest of the story, like a couple of lines had to be changed, and that's it. I don't know a modern editor that would let anyone get away with that.
That being said, the interaction with Tom Bombadil was actually crucial to the victory against Sauron.
Sure.
Because the hobbits found weapons in the Barrow Rights, like burial chambers,
Right. Yeah.
that apparently could detach the magic from the Witch King of Angmar.
Right.
That being said, they could have just put that in the movie or just deleted that whole thing. Book-wise, there was like that much of a reason.
Yeah.
It was a crucial one.
Yeah. But I mean, literally in the movie, that's replaced with Aragorn giving a throwaway line and unrolling the swords on top of, I mean, like it's so easily replaced that it's kind of embarrassing. It's funny. I liked the movies less and less versus the books as they proceeded. Right. So the first movie, I had a lot of nice things to say. Two Towers, less so, because the pedant in me started really getting upset about the changes to the military scenes, right? There's a lot of Tolkien put a lot of work into getting the war aspects just so, right? Like he did a lot of work on that, and Jackson just kind of went, didn't.
This will look better. Which is true. It looked fantastic.
Pay any attention to it. And then Return of the King just starts getting weird. You're just like, why did you do that? That actually makes no sense. This doesn't make any sense. Starts at Two Towers, but then it gets worse and worse. No. So my single least liked thing on a personal level is Eowyn's speech to Aragorn, which I was just talking about with somebody actually. So in the books, I think, well, no. In the books, Eowyn gives a speech in Return of the King. In the movies, I think the equivalent speech is given in Two Towers. They shifted it around when it takes place. Yep. In the book, Eowyn tears Aragorn a new one. It is one of the most scathingly feminist things I have ever read anywhere. Just anywhere. You know, some of the lines that she talks about, you know, the whole, you know, I'm of course paraphrasing. I'm not able to quote it exactly, but, you know, you give the women leave to stay behind in our homes to defend those burning homes, because of course you don't care, you're not going to be there anymore, right? Like it's this sort of, we're women, so you dismiss us, you don't give us agency, you don't give us acknowledgement, we're just supposed to stay at home and mind the hearth speech, and it's just blistering. And yet you have all these people who look at this and say, oh, well, she was in love with Aragorn. I'm like, she wasn't. She super wasn't in love with Aragorn. She was super in love with the opportunities that Aragorn could, as she saw it, give her, not the same thing.
It was, I had the same kind of critique on it, to where book-wise, she more has, I would say, admiration, as you would of like a superior, someone who's like, oh, they've done the things I want to do.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movies, they're just like, they're in love.
Yeah. Where in the book, I think it's
in the movies.
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, in the movie, she looks like a lost puppy following Aragorn around.
Yeah. And in the books, it's much more, at least I always read it much more as being, she really wanted to be part of Aragorn's party. And, you know, if she had to play the romance card to make that happen, she was willing to do that, but that was not her motivation.
I can't remember, I might be wrong, but I don't think there's anything like explicitly romantic between the two of them in the book.
She makes a couple of comments that imply it.
Okay.
You know,
Might just not be remembering them.
yeah, no, she does make some comments that kind of indicate that she is maybe willing to use that, right, to try to get there. But she's also clearly very resentful of the fact that the men don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, that they're allowed to love Aragorn and go off and do dangerous things with him, and nobody's telling Legolas to stay at home and mind the hearth.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of my, like, you actually softened it. You considerably softened it from what was actually in the book.
Oh yeah. I will also say I'm a huge nerd when it comes to Tolkien. I have my Gandalf Church Warden pipe here. I have another one there, and I have the Aragorn pipe on the way.
So let's talk about Battle of Five Armies.
Whoa. Hang on.
Oh my god.
I like how you're both like, no, negatory. This is
Everyone says
yeah.
that.
Look, yeah. I just can't.
She's like, that's all I got. I got a for you.
I can't.
No, fair enough.
But
I've
animated mountain goats.
Well, you know.
Yeah, I felt I have feelings. I have strong feelings. It's a real shame. That's all I gotta say.
We're gonna have to have you back for one of our Lord of the Ring discussions. We've done 2 so far. We'll have to do a third one and have you come in for it.
It would be my pleasure. It would be my absolute pleasure.
We'd have some fun together. We include our producer John, who's also a massive Lord of the Rings fan, and John comes from behind the camera and sits in front of it with us for a little bit, and it's a lot of fun. I think you'd enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. Tolkien is, as somebody who draws my own maps and makes conlangs and does overly intricate world building, I feel I belong to a very small club of authors, and Tolkien is always going to out-nerd me. Always.
He's gonna out-nerd most people.
Yep.
I always tell people that Tolkien takes 5 pages to tell you what color the sky was. But he does it in such a beautiful way you don't care.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's it's written so wonderfully. So.
And I will always love him for the shade he threw on Macbeth.
Uh-huh.
Nice. All right, Jen. We are at a point of our show where we like to ask our guests a silly question.
Oh, okay.
All right. And I think this one will be a little bit more fun with you, just because of a lot of the stories you've already written. So we've asked this of everybody, and we're always curious to see what their responses are. So, Jenn Lyons, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, Allosaurus.
Quick and decisive. I love it.
It's a good choice.
I mean, there's a
lot
of really excellent dinosaurs out there. I mean, but yeah, Allosaurus.
Nice. Yeah, we started asking this because so there's typically a third member of our on-screen troupe here, but Kathleen was unable to make it tonight. And she has a 5-year-old daughter, and her daughter was asked that question, but they didn't ask it of Kathleen, and Kathleen was like, wait, what? Am I chopped liver? I don't get it. What about me?
What about
I like dinosaurs too.
I mean, come on. I always think it's very amusing, right? That the popularity of dragons as a storytelling device started rising in the Western community right around the time we started digging big bones out of the ground. So to me, there's always that connection, right? Dinosaurs and dragons are kind of, connected in the mind, even if they're completely different in other ways.
Exactly.
And I just like, there's just all this really interesting stuff that's been happening lately with dinosaurs, right? You know, like I love that all of this stuff is coming up with the whole feathers thing and, you know, them. Yes, it's great. And then just in general, I love currently, right? You know, you watch through some more current dinosaur documentaries, and it used to be, it was like T-Rex or, you know, all of these different ones would be like, and this was a solo hunter. And now it's like, no, hunt in packs. They hunt in packs. This guy, this incredibly giant, you know, Gigantosaurus, hunts in packs. It's just like, yep, hunts in packs.
I love just the scientific advancement of going from creepy, scary lizard thing to big, gigantic chicken.
Yes. Yeah. I always love that one cartoon that runs around of, you know, somebody's taken the T-Rex skeleton and figured out how to like make a big fuzzy chick and make that work. Yes. Just as an example of.
I mean, the science right now suggests that T-Rex did not like roar or scream. It like balked like a chicken. And there's also a thought that people have been putting the arms wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
Because if you take like regular chicken wings and stick them forward,
right,
it looks like a T-Rex.
It looks wrong. Yeah, it looks exactly like a T-Rex. Yeah. No, there's actually there's a one of the animals that is in The Sky on Fire is this thing called a Titan drake, which is six-legged, because like I said, most things on the planet are six-legged. But it's basically, it's megafauna, right? It's a very, very big creature. And I found myself faced with the issue of how fast does it run? And it turns out that the only people that could answer that question were paleontologists. And it's not an easy question to answer, and it involves a lot of calculus. And
well, I'm tapping out.
my respect
my
respect for the skills went up considerably when I was sitting there going, "Oh my God, I have to try to do this to figure out." And a lot of questions to try to figure out how fast she ran.
Do you have like a little saved equation on how fast you can make your animals of your planet run?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, her. I mean, her species, right? Because it's very much a height, weight, bone structure kind of issue.
Oh God, that's too much math.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. I am one of those world builders that starts with the composition and size of the sun and the planets around it, and goes in there, right? Like I really go very, very granular with my world building, and figuring out how fast Overbite, her name's Overbite, how fast Overbite could run is honestly the hardest piece of science I've ever had to do for a book.
That is adorable that they're named Overbite.
I love the name.
We're running a little low on time. So, Jen, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes.
You've been absolutely fantastic. Where can our listeners go and find you and learn more about your work?
I have a website that I desperately need to update at JennLyons.com. I really, really need to update it. Yeah, I don't think Sky on Fire is even up there yet. But I'm also on, I blame my ADHD. I'm also on Threads and Instagram as Jenn Lyons and Tigers, on Twitter or X or whatever as Jenn Lyons author. I'm on Facebook, I think, Jenn Lyons author. You can find me pretty much all over the place. Any search. I have merch now. So if you go to threadless.com/Jenn Lyons, you can get themed shirts and just also stuff I've drawn because,
Cool.
I'm a nerd and I like doing stuff like that. Although I haven't put up my my fighting Urukai shirt yet. Because Saruman never just says Urukai, right? It's always my fighting Urukai. He really makes it sound like it's like a team,
Yeah, like a sports team.
A sports team. It's not
Like
just
matching jerseys.
Yeah, right. So I was like, I gotta do something that's like for the fighting Urukai.
Okay. Do you know how cool that would look on a hockey jersey, by the way? I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
As a hockey fan, just saying.
Yeah. The fighting Urukai, white hand.
Yeah, just the sports logo instead of whatever team. It's just white hand on the jersey.
Yeah.
Tim's in.
So
Yes.
I have designed that. I did do it. I just need to put it up. Yeah. So
just let us know when you do, because I will buy one. I'm
You
not
have
a
two
sports
sales
person.
You have 2 sales at least.
3 when John's
Fantastic. That's most of it, I think. It is available. All my stuff is also available audiobook as well. So
all right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to put those in the link below. So our listeners can hear your book on audio, see your book, get all your shirts and everything, all your merch. But yeah.
Buy the merch, do the things, kids.
Yes.
And speaking of doing the things, seems like a prime time to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing you can do to help our show continue to grow and get amazing guests like Jenn to come on the show and sit down and talk 17 shades of nerdy with us. And so, if you want to have that continue to happen, make sure you click the like and subscribe button on this video. Or if you're listening on your favorite audio podcast provider, make sure you're subscribing to the show, following the show. And hey, why not share the show with the ones that you nerdily love? So, but yeah, and go out and check out Jenn's work as well. We'll have, like Ben said, we'll have links in the show notes down below so that you guys can check out her future works coming up and all the cool things that she has already done. So, Jenn, thank you again for being on the show. We have greatly appreciated your time here.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for the FSF Popcast. Goodbye.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com.